Hello, good morning, good day, good whatever, whenever this is. Welcome to a new video. Hi, I'm Kat. Welcome to my channel. So I did a video a few weeks ago where I was reading YouTubers' best of books of 2023. And my process that I went through it is that my YouTubers who I normally watch, I went through their videos of their best of 2023 and I made a list. And this list, it was basically every book that I saw on their best of mentioned that I hadn't read and that I hadn't read. And I went through and made note of when books were repeated a bunch of times, what the most popular ones were, and what ones seemed most interesting to me. And in my last edition, I did basically going over all of the most popular ones, the ones that kept being repeated over and over again, to see if there's a reason that, we keep seeing these. Is there actually a valid reason that people keep mentioning these, and do I find them interesting as well? And honestly, that video went fantastic. I cannot believe how many 5-star reads I came out of that video with. It was a little insane. And I decided, let's try another version. But this one today is specifically going to be maybe not the books that were repeated the most often, but the ones that I personally found the most interesting, or the ones that maybe were already on my TBR, and this is the excuse that I'm finally using to get to them. So once again, I have 10 books, and we are going to be going through the next week and just reading these 10. And I could not be more excited. I have a great feeling. I really feel like I'm going to be coming out of this with a bunch of 5 stars again. And yeah, this is just really, really exciting to see how these books are going to go. And again, most of these have been on my TBR for a bit now, and they're ones that I've heard of, I've been interested in, but I've never really made an excuse to sit down and read them, I've never found time in my schedule to add these into what I'm reading, and I'm so excited to finally have an excuse. So what 10 books am I going to be reading? Let's read it out to you. So I have Anastasia by Sophie Stark. This is a historical fantasy romance, which I don't read historical fantasy, so I'm really excited to finally be getting to one. I've Survived by, I think, Holly Jackson. I've read books of hers before and really enjoy it. This is a YA thriller, which could go well, could not. Excited to see. On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I hear so many things about how beautiful this is. The Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. This is an erotic thriller, and it's kind of crazy how many people I've heard that have given this a 5 stars. And I'm curious. I've never read an erotic thriller, I think. And also, so there's 5 books in this series. I'm planning on only reading the first. We'll see if that changes. The Helm of Midnight. This is a fantasy book, and in this world there's these masks, I guess, that people can create after someone dies and imbue with their spirit and energy. And this mask of notorious killer gets out in the public. A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This is by T. Kingfisher, who's one of my favorite authors. I just love her range. And this is actually a YA book, but it sounds very whimsical and kind of silly, but that could be good. Blood and Steel. This is a fantasy romance. Why not? Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I think this is nonfiction, maybe more self-helpy, I'm not sure, but so many people have loved this. By a Thread by Lucy Score. This is I guess, boss and employee romance, workplace romance. I've read books by Lucy Score before, so this is my foray into her other stuff to see if I do like her as an author, I guess, because I've read her Knock 'Em Out series, which is a small town romance series, and I want to test her other stuff and see if that works for me as well. Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. I've read one book by her before, and I really want to get into her whole sci-fi backlist. So this one, honestly, no idea what it's about, but it sounds interesting. I've heard what it's about, cannot remember it, but it sounded interesting at the time. And yeah, those are the 10 books that we'll be reading in this video. So please stay tuned to see what I think about all of them. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe, and let's get into this. All right, let's get into some updates. So I think how we're mostly going to be doing this going forward is just updates, either when there's something that I'm feeling very strongly, or when I'm done the book, which I know that might not be the most exciting, is only hearing my thoughts at the end of the book. So we'll really see just kind of what I have to say as we go. But I also don't want to make this video a million hours long. And that is basically to start with, because I do have one book done and I do want to talk about that, and I'm planning on reading some more today, and we'll see how many updates we get. But I have finished Blood and Steel. So this one was a fantasy romance, and I wanted to start this off fun, light, just like something kind of easy, and I know for a lot of times fantasy romance for me too, very quick reads. So something that, you know, make me feel good, make me feel like I have some nice progress to start with. And this was fine. So I know specifically I saw this on Tori Between Pages, her best of the year. And if I remember who recommended these books, I will say here, but a lot of these ones that I'm going to be reading in this video are particularly like, I only heard a few people talk about them, not very many, but they're books that I was really interested in, so really wanted to have like that excuse to pick up. So in this world, we are following this kingdom where this prophecy came about, I think it was 20 years previous, 30 years previous, something like that, where it very vaguely said that if a woman is holding steel, some like terrible thing will come about. So up to this point, women had very, very prominently been warriors in this kingdom. They were like very involved in everything to do with fighting, I guess, like all of the wars. They were very highly decorated soldiers. And suddenly with this prophecy, the decision came down that they wanted to basically stop women from ever being warriors again, and just like completely remove this ability for them to hold steel, hold swords, hold whatever the prophecy said. And we're following 20, 30 years later, a young woman who has grown up her entire life, like desperately wanting to be a warrior. She like secretly practices, she like sneaks in and watches all the men practice and kind of like practices their techniques at home by herself. And she just like desperately wants this. So she makes basically this petition to be able to compete. These men in this competition become like one of the guards of the kingdom. And there's this whole thing that goes on, and she's granted permission to start training to be one of them. And training under this like really sexy warrior who she has kind of like, who they're like mutually very attracted to each other, but can't act on it because he's her mentor and all of this. So those are the main things that happened. And overall, I think that this was very fun, but not much happened. So very fun in the sense that, you know, like it was a very standard fantasy romance. It hit a lot of the very standard things that happen in most of them, which that is never going to be a complaint for me. It's just like, it's a very standard fantasy romance. And yeah, overall it was fine. It wasn't, I don't know, like I think the world building definitely needed a lot more, and the characters weren't quite as fleshed out as I typically like them to be. And the romance, that was kind of one of the only things that was I was starting to like feel it by the end of it. I was starting to really believe that, but there was a lot of things that I wish they had built upon. So like overall, it really wasn't bad at all. I felt it was a little lacking, which maybe in book 2, it will pick up more and we'll get more answers to a lot of these things going on. And I'm also like, maybe I'll pick it up. I'm not really decided yet. I'm still unsure if I'm interested in picking it up, but you know, like that, it was fine. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with this one, and it's a pretty solid 3-star for me. And yeah, I'm going to be having a very heavy reading day today, so hopefully I'm gonna have like 1 or 2 more to come at you with some updates. I've already started a few of the books, but I just kind of need to sit down and finish them. That's very much my terrible attention span, is that I need to be reading multiple things at once and just constantly switching between books. So I have a few on the go, and we'll see which ones I actually commit to. I am a little nervous though, because 2 of the books that I was planning on reading for this video, Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton and On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, I put holds on them at the library, and I didn't think that they were this popular, but both of them are saying it's going to be multiple months to come in, so I may have to try and track those down through another way. So as I am here chopping away on some sweet potatoes, let me tell you about the next book that I'm reading. And this one is kind of appropriate for cooking, but probably better if I was talking about it when I'm making muffins later. But I'm reading A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. So T. Kingfisher, one of my favorite authors. She does such unique like writing stuff. One of my best friends actually is about to start one of her books for the first time and asked for my asked for like my feelings on it, and I very much like described it as she does like twisted fairy tales, whimsical fantasies, or creepy horror. And they all, like all of her books tend to go into one of these areas, and they're all very unique and just very creative ideas, I find. So this one definitely is no different, and I think it is one of the first books that I've read from her that is more YA based. So this is very much like we're following a 14-year-old girl, and it is definitely younger, a bit more silly than her other reads, and yeah, just like a little bit more low stakes than a lot of her other fantasy books. And yeah, like I was saying, like a lot of her fantasy is very silly, it's very whimsical, very ridiculous, and this is 100% falling in line with that. So we are following a 14-year-old girl who is a baker, and she has a magical ability where she can basically like control bread but also animate bread. So she makes these like gingerbread cookies come to life, and that's like a big part of her thing, is that she likes to make these little gingerbread cookies, have fun with them. And also she has like a pet sourdough starter. So it's really ridiculous. It's really cute. And yeah, just like one of the silliest magical abilities I've ever heard, which she very much addresses in this, in that she keeps talking about it. She's like, I am barely a wizard. I barely have powers. Like, you cannot actually consider me a wizard. Because this is a world that has quite a few magic users. So it's like not really that rare of a thing for people to have magic, and also not that rare for people to have like really strange abilities. Like we are shown a woman who, her ability is that she can revive dead horses, and that's all she can do is bring dead horses to life. But very useful in battle scenarios, very useful in, like, she specifically uses this ability to charge people to transport their horses who have died out to the city, up to burial grounds. But where we start off in this book, there seems to be a series of murders against people who have magical abilities, and we are really following as our young protagonist is being targeted. And also she's noticing that a lot of people around her are being like, or a lot of the magic users that she knows, they are starting to disappear. So she's starting to be hunted down because she has a magical ability, and she is trying to find a way to stop it. And yeah, that's kind of just where the book is right now, is that we are following along as she's like investigating this thing, trying to stay alive. She's teamed up with a young boy whose sister was murdered because she was also a magic user, and just they're trying to find a way to stop these crimes from happening. So far I'm really enjoying it, but definitely this is a very silly book, very ridiculous, and I can tell that it is pretty young. Like, it definitely feels very, very YA or middle grade even, like which is not really necessarily my favorite type of read, but I'm enjoying this. I think it's just like a fun, whimsical time, and you know, really don't see anything wrong with that. So I have a good feeling that this is going to be pretty highly rated. Like, I'm very much just trying to stay in the mindset of this is just like a fun, silly time. Okay, food all in the oven. This is like meal prep for the next few days. I am going to go do my walk for the day, which I have to do 45 minutes a day minimum, and I am aiming mostly for 10K steps. Like 45 minutes is the absolute minimum I can do, but 10K is the goal. It's just like on those days that I can't. But yeah, I'm gonna go walk and probably finish reading this book while I do. Okay, so I've been walking here. I'm at my standing desk. I've just been here reading, and I basically did like long enough to finish A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking and also start on the next book, which we'll be talking about after. First let's talk about A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which, wow, the amount of times that I have messed up this name, kind of hilarious. And I keep having to like have a note of it next to me to remind me what I'm actually saying. But this was super cute. It was incredibly silly, incredibly ridiculous, but that is also exactly what I was expecting. And yeah, I loved it for that. I just thought it was like the cutest thing ever. So we're following this 14-year-old girl who is basically trying to save her kingdom from a rebellion while also just like saving it through her baked goods. Which is the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, she's very young, she's very like unaware of the world, and it's very, very a silly story. So her ability is to control bread, and there is this threat to the city, which is somebody wiping out all of these wizards that are there, and things progress to where it seems like the city might fall. And because so many of these wizards have been killed, she is like the last one standing, which is ridiculous because she's just this girl with this silly power. And she is tasked with keeping the kingdom afloat, basically, and like not letting the walls fall until the army can get there. And how does she do that? Through a basically malicious sourdough starter. Oh, sorry, one sec, I have to play. Where's your ball? Where's your ball? Come on, give me your ball. Woo! So yeah, like I was saying, she basically saves the city through throwing sour bread at people and also creating like little gingerbread army people. It was ridiculous and silly, but I loved it. I give it a 4-star. And yeah, I am once again reminded that I just really, really like T. Kingfisher. I love all of her work, and this woman's like imagination, ridiculous, so creative. I'm just like blown away by all of the things that she comes out with. Since then, I've already started it, but I made like significantly more progress in it. But Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. This one I know for sure was recommended by Peruse Project because she's one of my few sci-fi people who recommend sci-fi books. And I really wanted to get more into Anne Leckie's world ever since, I read Translation State last year, which was one of the 2023 Goodreads sci-fi nominees, which I do have a video up if you want to check that out. I'll have the link down in the description. But that was a really interesting book, like really exploring like themes of identity and your place in the world. So I'm really curious to see what this one is like and if she really gets into like other sci-fi topics and stuff. And so far, all I can say is I'm very confused. So an ancillary person, this is like a huge space opera, not really space opera, but it takes place in this huge universe with multiple planets and this huge empire that is going through, and they call it annexing different planets, which I think is basically just like destroying the culture that's there and bringing them into theirs. And in the past, we are following, while this is still taking place, an ancillary, which is a person who was basically donated. I don't know if I'm going to say donated, but like given to the empire to become like, I'm really confused, but I think they're basically like they lose their consciousness, so they become basically one with the ship. So it's like the ship is the ancillary, and then there's all these bodies that are like the mind hive of it, or I guess hive mind, but they're all connected. They're all these different bodies, but they are the same mind. So there's this ancillary we're following it from the perspective of one of them, but it's really like 28 different bodies or something. So intensely confusing, and that's been part of it. But we're following that timeline, and then we're also following a timeline that's I think 1,000 years in the future, and this ancillary has broken away from their group and is pretending to be human. So something has happened where everything else, like all of its other components, have died, and it is the only one left. Like it is the one soul mind left, and it has left this empire and is just traveling around by itself pretending to be human. And it seems like maybe they want to try to take down the empire, but I am super confused about a lot of this. I feel like, I don't know, like it's super, super cool, this idea of the ancillaries and like these ship minds, these like people, all of this stuff. So interesting, so cool. I'm just confused. And I think that is 100% my own fault. I'm hoping that going forward, like this is part of like the confusion is part of the mystery, and that as you go forward more, you know, like it all clears up and it becomes like this interesting plot thing going forward. But so far, just very confused. So I have finished Ancillary Justice, and thank you, Coffee, for this, and I think it's very solidly a 3-star. It was definitely interesting. The world was really, really cool, and just a lot of the areas explored again were interesting, but I found it too confusing. And I think, yeah, it was just very, very confusing because we were alternating between these two timelines and just so much was happening. And it was very, very hard to keep track of the characters. So this is one where like, I wish they'd had a glossary or something for the characters. But yeah, it was just very hard to keep track of. And I don't know, I just couldn't fully get invested. I also feel like the writing style was just very like cold and abrupt, I guess. So that kind of made me like really struggle to connect with anything. So it just kind of wasn't there for me. But again, like I was interested. I was incredibly interested. I just couldn't really follow what was happening. You know, like I am well versed in science fiction. I read a lot of sci-fi. So I can't see this being very friendly to anybody who's new to the genre either. So that really makes me disappointed too. And this being the second and lucky book that I've read, the second one that I've only given a 3-star, like I'm really, I don't know, like curious about what she'll be like for me in the future, like if I will ever have luck with her. I think she does some really interesting things. She has some really creative ideas, some really unique things. I just don't feel like the execution is there for me. Like it just, for me, it is not something that I really am that intrigued to keep reading, I guess. So yeah, it was 3-star. It was interesting, but it just wasn't as interesting as I wanted, I guess. And yeah, a bit disappointed in that. I was really hoping that this one would be much better for me, but yeah, we have what we have. And great reading day for me, like finished off 2 more books, which feels great. It is, I don't know, I think I'm done reading for tonight. I think that I need to be like mentally break and just watch YouTube or something. But I have started a few other books, so I think that I will be able to finish some of them fairly quickly, hopefully, and have more updates very soon. Good morning, friends. I have another book to update on, but first I'm gonna start making breakfast. So this is very unintentional, but I feel like every update I've done so far for this video has just been like me cooking or me in my kitchen. So I don't know. And maybe I'll have more updates because I am actually planning on trying to start a sourdough starter today and maybe bake some scones. So maybe I will have more things to talk about then. Also, I feel like this lighting is terrible, but it is also like 6 a.m. So I guess that's kind of the best we can do at the moment. So I'm doing my very exciting morning breakfast of yogurt mixed with protein powder. Very random, but it's like my very, very high protein breakfast that I just love. And yeah. So I have finished one book, and that was On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, which I was so worried that this was going to not come in on time, but I just actually, my hold came in last night at the library and then I managed to read it super quick. So this is my current favorite protein powder. It is the Blessed Plant Protein in the peanut butter cups flavor. And I use this constantly. I'm just about out of right now, actually. So yeah, super short. It was only about 200 pages, and it was just written as a letter to the author's mother, basically just kind of talking about their relationship, his sexuality, his experience growing up in America as an immigrant, and just a lot of things that he experienced throughout his life. That was a huge part of this, is that he really was using this letter to kind of talk more about his experiences with sexuality to his mother, who he never really felt that they had like that open relationship where he's able to talk about certain things. And he also really got into a lot of the like just really, really hard parts of growing up, and a lot of the things that just like were really, really difficult in his life. As well as a lot of this was, I would say, like written in vignettes. Watch me pronounce that terribly, but telling different things about, like talking about Vietnam during certain time periods, what was going on culturally at certain times, just to kind of lay the landscape of like, this is the time period, this is what was happening. And also delving a lot into the family history of his grandmother and his mother, and this like generational trauma that they lived through and how it really impacted them as people. And again, like this generational trauma, how it like they lived through this terrible stuff and like fully gave them PTSD, and then they never really were able to recover from it, like even in their old age, and just really delving into that as well. And yeah, this was beautiful. Very hard hitting emotionally, very intense, like really hard to kind of talk about and really like, I don't know, like express how emotional this was and how much it really did feel just intensely painful to read. But yeah, it was beautiful. It was really, really beautifully written. This is the type of memoir that I love. Just something where, I don't know, like it was just, the writing was so beautiful. It was like very poetic, which, you know, because I've read poetry collections from this author before, and like, yeah, he's an incredible poet, and just, I'm not surprised that his writing style was also just as beautiful. But yeah, this was fantastic. It was a 5-star, and like, thank you to everybody who recommended this one. I'm pretty sure it was Kayla from Books and Lala who said that this was one of her 5 stars from last year, and like, yeah, 100%, such a good read. So I'm feeling pretty fantastic about that I have another 5-star read. Like, that is just really, really good. And honestly, I think this is my first nonfiction book that I've read this year, but really I need to get back on top of that because I used to be so good at reading like multiple nonfiction a month. I just need to start bringing that back in my life. Okay, and yeah, I do have actually some more updates. Well, one more update really to say. That'll be just before I get into my breakfast. But I have also started By a Thread by Lucy Score. So I've read quite a few books by Lucy Score before, and well, particularly only her Knock 'Em Out series, which is a trilogy of small town romances. And then this will be the first one that I've read from her that's like outside of that, just something a bit different. So this is advertised as a enemies to lovers, like grumpy boss romance. Like, so it's somebody within a workplace and their boss, which I don't know how, like, I don't know how I feel about that, because I don't like these relationships where there's a power dynamic or like power imbalance in it. Those just always feel kind of icky to me. So we'll see as we go forward what we think about it. But we are starting off following which actually one thing I really like about this so far is that the protagonists are in their late 30s and early 40s. So I really appreciate that, first off. But we're following Allie, who is at the start of the book a waitress in her late 30s. She's working at this pizza restaurant, and in comes Dominic, who is this high-powered exec, and he comes in and is an asshole to her, and she decides to take revenge by basically writing F you across his pizza. It ends up getting her fired from her job. So Dominic is meeting with his mother. She sees this all go down and feels really bad about it, but also Allie is the first person she's ever met who actually like got under Dominic's skin. So she decides to offer Allie a job, which lo and behold, his mother owns this, like, I don't know if she owns, but she's the head of this elusive, incredibly well-known fashion magazine. Like, I'm thinking she's like an Anna Wintour type of person. So she offers Allie like a position as an admin at her magazine, and Allie comes in and starts killing it. She and Dominic don't really interact that often within, but he is the creative head, I think, of the company now. There was recently like this really big drama about his father was the previous creative head, but he was harassing a bunch of the women who worked within the company, so he left, and now Dominic's taken over. And so far it's just like a lot of both of them figuring out their jobs and a lot of like just butting heads. But it's dual perspective, so we can tell that both of them are like extremely attracted to each other. They just kind of like hate the person that they are, and they just constantly are on edge fighting with each other. So I think it's going to be something like they eventually realize the person isn't that terrible. But yeah, I'm into it so far. Like, the writing's pretty good. I find it's definitely rom-com vibes. It's funny, it's interesting. It's just like, for me, just that power imbalance, I'm a little scared about how they're going to address that. So otherwise, feeling pretty good things about this one. So I've successfully made some scones for the first time, and they actually turned out decent. The only thing is they are incredibly thin, which I'm not sure if that was I made the dough too thin or my baking powder is not good anymore. Either way, I did like a Parmesan basil thing, and it's actually pretty good. So I'll leave the recipe down below, but it was like super, super simple to follow. And yeah, these were my first time ever trying to bake them, so I'm happy with that. I also need to share my nails because I love it. I'm trying to be a little more creative and like mix colors, and this also felt a little spring inspired. So I have Lavender Syrup from Holo Taco, Ocean Lies by Mooncat, and Menchie the Cat by Holo Taco. I'll put a little picture that's more close up of it, but I like how these turned out. Yeah, I'm gonna go sit at my desk and then we actually have an update to talk about. So I'm very, very happy to put on there. Very happy to report that I finished another book, and this one's gonna be a 4 stars. So we are keeping up this like really great rating thing going on. So I finished By a Thread by Lucy Score, which I was talking about in my last update. And it was very rom-com vibes, and it was very much was like this romance between an employee and her boss, and all this like chaotic rom-comness that ensues because of it. And I really liked it. I actually really did. They work at this fashion magazine, and it was really interesting because Allie, our main female character, she was an admin who was just really like involved in all of these different things. So she's kind of part of this like admin pool, so she's constantly being moved around, and it's just like the workplace environment was very interesting to read about. And then Dominic had recently taken over as creative lead, so he's really trying to figure out his role in the job and really actually working with Allie in a lot of ways because she has like these fantastic ideas, and he's really like, or she's really helping out with all of this stuff. But it ended up not being too uncomfortable, the fact that he was her boss. It was very clearly addressed the fact that he felt deeply uncomfortable with him being in a position of power, and he really was trying to keep things like for the longest time like that nothing would happen. Like they addressed that they're attracted to each other, and then really like we're like, okay, even though we're attracted to each other, we can't do anything about it because we work together, this isn't right. And even when they got together, they very, very quickly brought in like their boss, they brought in HR, they brought in all these things. Allie was reassigned, so she wasn't working directly with him, and it was like the way they addressed that made it work very well for me, and I really enjoyed that. The only thing that like I was very, very close to giving this a 5 star, but what kind of ended for me was the third act and the third act conflict. And this one I understand where the characters were coming from, where it resulted in this happening, but I didn't like it. And also one big conflict that they have this entire time is that Allie is very poor at the time. Her father is in a nursing home, and she is deeply struggling to pay for this, while as Dominic is very rich. And she maintains this entire relationship that she doesn't want his money, she doesn't want any help from him, she wants him to stay as separate as possible and to not help her with anything. But after they get in a fight, the thing that wins her back is him paying for everything, him like doing all of these things to like, which it's nice that he was like doing all these things to relieve the burden for her, to make like get rid of all of her worries. But it was like the exact thing that she didn't want from this relationship was him paying for everything, and yet that's what won her back. That part I didn't like that as much. But overall, 4 stars. I like a rom-com, I like a little enemies to lovers kind of thing, and I like older protagonists. So overall for that, it was a win. And I'm really excited to read more by Lucy Score now. I've been like looking through her backlist books, and I do think I want to read quite a bit more of them. So if you've read any of them and you want to leave me a recommendation, please do so. So I finished what I think is like my first actual fail of this video, the first book that I'm walking away incredibly unimpressed and like deeply, maybe, I don't know if I'd say deeply dislike, but I didn't enjoy it. And I think this was definitely the one that was like the riskiest for me to enjoy because it's YA, it's a YA thriller. These tend to sometimes not go as intense as I want my thrillers to be. And anyways, this book is 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. So I find that with YA thrillers, sometimes they can get very like, I'm gonna say like maybe too surface level, or also they don't get as intense into like the things that keep you on edge and keep you like addicted and wanting to go forward, because sometimes the topics they don't want to get as intensely serious, which I understand it's for a younger audience, and maybe this is just me realizing again like I really should just accept that YA thrillers are not my thing. But in this one, we're following a group of 6 kids who are in an RV. They're going on a spring break trip, and while they're driving there, the GPS takes them down this like weird route. There's no service, there's no lights, and while they're there, all of their tires blow out. So they are stranded in this like really isolated area, and then it comes to light that like there is a shooter outside, there is somebody who is contacting them, somebody who's doing this to them to try and like break them psychologically, I guess, in a way. Because there is, what the shooter is claiming is that one of them has a secret, one of them is they are there to get this secret out of this one person, and once they get this secret they will kill them and all of the other 5 can survive. So it's just like them in this RV, all of them, like they have this walkie-talkie that the shooter has with them, and they're all like kind of releasing their secrets and trying to figure out who is the one who has the secret and also how to get out of this situation. And I really just thought that like the resolution to this one was stupid. It was not, yeah, there was a reason, there were reveals, there were things, it just wasn't anything that interesting. And I really just kind of felt like all of it was stupid and pointless, and like I just didn't like this. Like every one of the characters I disliked. I hated being in our main character's head because like this self-doubt she had for herself, hated it. They were all like terrible friends, they were all like so many things I did not like about it. And yeah, like the mystery itself wasn't really that interesting. So once again, we're coming to the like, it wasn't that thrilling actually. And yeah, it is a 2-star for me because I just did not, there was nothing about it that like actually kept me interested or invested. So unfortunately, yeah, 2 stars, which I was definitely going into this one feeling like that there was a very decent chance I wouldn't enjoy it. And this was like my experiment, I guess, one. But so I'm not super surprised. I am just disappointed. And yeah, otherwise like everything's been going very good, so like that is very, very awesome. So going into this video, I very like mentally told myself I was only going to read the first installation of the Mindfuck series, because even though they are short novellas, I was telling myself I only had to read the first one, like, and if I wanted to I could continue, but just in order to like make this easier on myself, I only had to read the first one and I could see from there. But after reading the first one, I got so ridiculously addicted to this series. Like the author did a very good job of leaving every novella off on such a cliffhanger that you had to keep going forward, but also the story was so addicting. I really don't know what I was expecting, but it definitely was not this. And yeah, I am ridiculously obsessed with this. Like I read all 5 installations in like a day, not even a day, probably like very, very short amount of time. And I didn't even want to film updates on it because I was just so into it and I just kept like wanting to go forward. I didn't want to stop. I just wanted to like stay in this mindset and just keep staying addicted, keep staying into this. And anyways, I gave this a 5 stars. This is one that is, I can very much see not for everyone. And it is very much, it's a woman getting revenge on people who have wronged her in her past. And what was done to her was horrific. And what she does to the people is quite intense as well. So it's very much something like, please read trigger warnings before this because it is like very, very intense. And I can see it being incredibly upsetting for a lot of people. But still, like I really just ate this shit up. And I can't believe how addicted I got to it. It just like was really, the author did a really good job at pacing things so that like every installation ended on such a crazy note and just some kind of thing going forward that like you had to see what happened. And she just did a really good job of getting you invested in this character's like journey for revenge and really caring about the relationship between her, because she is a serial killer and the person she is dating is an FBI agent who is basically assigned to her case. She knows that he's working on the case, but he doesn't know who she is. And there was just a fantastic amount of suspense there of him multiple times like almost finding out and her kind of thinking like, oh, will he be okay if he finds out? Like, could our relationship survive this? And also like, he's the person who's kind of making me like want to go past this revenge, all this stuff. But it was fantastic. I gave it a 5 star. It was just like so addicting and so good. Yeah, another win from this one. So yeah, like I'm incredibly happy at how well this is going. So we're doing really good overall in this video. Hi, hello. I have started 2 books that I have to talk about. Let's fix this angle a little bit. Okay, so I have 2 books to talk about. Both of them about halfway through, and yeah, let's start. So first off, The Helm of Midnight. I am this far in, which looks like a little bit over halfway, and I'm loving this one. So this takes place in a super interesting fantasy world where basically there is magic, but it seems like all of this magic basically is able to be imbued into objects. So they have these things called death masks, where when somebody dies, they're able to imbue, I don't even know if it's like their spirit, their essence, their abilities into this mask, and it basically takes all of the things that they would like, say a very famous surgeon were to do it, and he could make a death mask and it would like contain all of his medical knowledge. So then somebody else could wear that mask and like potentially have that knowledge and just really be able to use it to like enhance their ability while they're wearing the mask. So the start of this book, we are following a guardswoman. So she's basically a police officer, and she's working at this gala, and this famous death mask gets stolen. And it's really more like infamous because it is the death mask of this really famous killer. So 10 years before, this man named Louis Charbon was notorious for having killed a string of people, and with each death he somehow like really horrifically mutilated the bodies somehow, and it seems like it's with magic, where he did something to basically, it's sounding like he turns the bodies into like art flower displays, and next to every death he would kind of write like death is art. So somebody had illegally made a mask from him, because you're not supposed to make these masks of terrible people, and it ends up getting stolen at this gala. And we're following the investigator as she is trying to figure out what happens and like really delve into the underworld of this city. But we're also in different timelines. So there's another one that's 2 years before, where we're following a young woman, and she seems to somehow get involved with a different type of mask, and it like leaves its power imbued in her. And I'm really not sure where her storyline is going, but it seems like something with the mask, there was some kind of mistake, and instead of leaving like this knowledge within the mask, it went into her body instead. And then we're also following a third perspective, which is of Louis Charbon, who is the murderer, and we're learning about his history and why he got into like killing these people and what the reason behind it was. And it's just really, really fascinating. It seems like this is going to be like a very good murder mystery, kind of like obviously who stole the mask, but now I think there's about to be murders that are starting up again, like in the same style. So somebody's using this mask to murder people, and just seeing the motives behind why he was starting to do these killings is really, really interesting. And then I'm really interested to see where this third character comes in and like what aspects she's going to play in it. But overall, really, really enjoying this so far, like really engrossed in it and like so intrigued with what's going on. So I'm loving this so far, and like I'm having a really, really good feeling that this is going to be a very high rating. And then I've also started Anastasia by Sophie Lark. So this is like a historical fantasy romance, which I am not a historical fantasy person at all. So I was a little apprehensive going into this one, but I do have to say the writing is fantastic, and the story has like completely engrossed me. So this is basically a retelling of the Romanov story of the last Tsars of Russia, and it is specifically from the perspective of Anastasia growing up. But the big difference is that this world has magic. So a lot of different people have magical abilities, and part of what has kept the Romanovs in power is that they have this ability to freeze time, and that is one that like runs through the whole family and is pretty much the thing that has enabled them to be like the ruling people, because they're so powerful with it. So we start the story, Anastasia's a young girl, we're following her through her life, but when she's young, it is revealed that she is one of the few people, or actually she's the only person in her generation who has this time stopping ability. She is very much somebody who doesn't want to live within the confines of like the typical princess life. She really wants to be like involved in all the action. She wants to be involved in battles and like in the war and everything that's going on. And she does in fact sneak out when she's a young girl. When her brother is going to visit their father in the battlefields, she sneaks along and basically joins them. And it's while she's there that she sees a young boy going to try and kill her father. And this is when her power manifests and she's able to freeze time, save her father's life. And in doing so, this young boy is caught, and as punishment, he is basically like taken away from his family, brought into Anastasia's uncle's care, and is going to be a ward of the family and raised kind of as a Russian. So his father had been the leader of this other tribe who was in rebellion, and him being taken kind of ended this rebellion because they ended up coming to like a conclusion after that. But he is a young boy who just really kind of hit it off with Anastasia, and a lot of the story is the two of them meeting throughout various points of their life and just like continuously being drawn to each other. And even though she's repeatedly told to stay away from this boy, she just can't help it, and just they form this friendship that really like makes no sense based on who they are, but they just like really are constantly drawn to each other. I'm at right now, they're a new sorcerer has come to town named Rasputin, and he is just this mysterious figure who has like all of these mystical abilities, is able to tell the future, is able to like do all these predictions and stuff. And he's really like brought everyone in court has become like enamored with him. And Anastasia's brother has the sickness that Rasputin has created a cure for, or like a temporary cure that regularly needs to be done. And because of that, he's like made himself like invaluable to the royal family, is like basically become like their royal, I'm not going to say sorcerer, but kind of that vibe. And he's really like imparted himself into the royal family and become like integral. But we're already starting to get hints that like, you know, there's a few things that aren't quite adding up for him. And he's teaching Anastasia magic on the side and all of this stuff, but you can tell that something is coming soon, and something not very great is going to come soon. Like, obviously, if you know the story, you know what's going to happen. But I'm really, really enjoying this so far. I definitely didn't think that I would enjoy this. I think it's just like, it is a time period that I am interested in, and also just adding this magical aspect is making it really, really fascinating for me. So I'm definitely enjoying this one like significantly more than I thought I would. I also think that Sophie Lark's a pretty good writer, so this is good. This is really, really good, and I'm like really happy, really excited to keep going, and yeah, loving that one as well. So hi, I finished up, where is it? The Helm of Midnight. And like, I knew I was going to be rating this one really high. I like pretty much immediately knew that this was going to be like a super high rating, just because of like how immersed I was in the world, how like incredibly fascinating I found this murder mystery aspect, and just the magic system itself. And yeah, gave it a 5-star. Also, if you're hearing any squeaking, we have somebody just playing with his ball over there. So yeah, 5 stars for me. Really, really love this one. It got into some really interesting aspects, and like the end of this mystery and this murder mystery that was happening was just so incredibly satisfying that just like it worked so well for me. And like I was saying, there we are following 3 different perspectives and 3 different timelines, and the way that they ended up like all kind of coming together, all kind of resolving all of these mysteries, and the way that this like tied into what was actually happening was just so interesting. And I really like the motivations of the murder, all of this stuff. Like, it just really made for a compelling story. So yeah, I loved it. Really, really loved it. It also had like an interesting mythology to the world, and that is part of what like caused the magical powers. And there's this presence of the gods that are kind of things have been hidden or starting to come to light, and really, really found it was interesting. So yeah, 5 stars. But weirdly though, even though this is 5 stars, I don't know if I necessarily want to continue on with the series, because there is one other book that's out, and I don't know if I really want to continue. Like, I think this just very perfectly wrapped things up for me. Like, it did leave on kind of a note of intrigue, but I don't know if I am intrigued enough to want to go forward, which is crazy when, like, you think of how high I rated it. Like, I just feel very happy with the conclusion of the story and things ending off where they are. So it's kind of weird, but like, I'm not even really sure if I want to keep going with it, but yes, this was a great recommendation. Really, really enjoyed it. Also a very underrated fantasy, because I think it has like 2,000 ratings on Goodreads. So another one like really, really worth checking out, I think. And very happy that I read it for this video. Hey, so I finished reading Anastasia and really, really enjoyed it. Like I've said before, like historical fantasy is not my thing. So I was definitely going into this one a little apprehensive. Is that a cat? Oh, it is. Okay, never mind. Our neighbor's cat is out and just got a little distracted. Okay, but yeah, I didn't think that I would enjoy this quite as much as I did, so I'm really, really happy with how it went. And I don't know, like, I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the romance quite a bit, and it was just kind of cool having this magical aspect in this time period, and like just all these different things that happened. So the story stayed like fairly, at least from what I know, fairly similar to the original, like what actually happened, except yes, they have magic, and that's like a huge driving portion of this. So Rasputin is still the like mysterious figure who comes in, betrays the Romanovs, and like really is the one who orchestrates their downfall in this. But he's like this mysterious sorcerer, in the book, and he just has these like mysterious powers. He's able to like the youngest Romanov's son, he has this blood sickness that Rasputin is able to come in and heal, and kind of keeps the royal family dependent on him for that. And it is really, really interesting, the reveal of like who he actually is and like what he's actually doing and everything. Really interesting. And the book just, I've really liked how it went. Like I thought it went in a super interesting way, and like I just really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, love the magical aspects, love the time period, really enjoyed the writing. So really happy that I finally read a Sophie Lark book. I'm very curious to read some more of hers. The only thing is I think she does more like dark romances, so a lot of like mafia, or I know she has a really popular like serial killer romance, which I'm not sure how ready I am to get into that, but I'm really curious and I really, really want to try it. Really love this one. I'm giving it a 4 stars, just really enjoyed it. The only like thing is partway through there was a very drastic thing that happened that like changed up the whole story. This was actually like towards the ending, like very much towards the ending. And it did end up changing things to like a happier note, but I don't know if I necessarily like it. Like I'm still a little unsure like how I feel about that having happened to the narrative of the story, where it definitely made a happy ending. It made the story much happier than it would have been otherwise, but I don't know fully how I feel about it. But yeah, 4 stars, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really, really fun story. And then since my wait was like a ridiculous long time at the library, I ended up getting an Audible copy of Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. So I guess she is an English writer who had this like relationship column in, I'm not sure if it was a newspaper or a magazine or something, but she had this column just talking about relationships, talking about dating, talking about all modern things of like love. And this book is really her telling her story of like her terrible relationships that she's had and how she really learned just like all of her different experiences dating from a teenager to her late 20s, her relationship with her friends, her relationship just dating as a 20-something who doesn't know what she's doing and really having like no clue how to navigate any of this, and also like navigating things of like your friends getting into relationships and suddenly you are not their most important person, and you know, just trying to figure out like how to deal with these different like relationship dynamics and all these things in your life as you're going through your 20s. I'm finding it incredibly relatable. There's a lot of things that like definitely felt very, very valid to me and things that I've definitely experienced throughout the years. So I'm really enjoying it so far. And it's just like a kind of funny anecdotal book about like some of her terrible relationships experiences and things that she's learned about love and dating throughout the years. So I only have a few hours left of that audiobook, but I'm definitely really enjoying it so far. And I'm having a really good feeling that this is going to be a good one. Plus, I don't know why I didn't realize that this one was nonfiction. So, hey, there's another nonfiction read for this month, but having a good feeling, and I'm definitely going to be able to get that one done within the next few hours. Hello, kitty cat. Hello. So I finished Everything I Know About Love, and I think this is going to be a 5-star read, actually. So I found like so much of it to be incredibly relatable, and just so much about the book was like dating in your 20s, just trying to figure out your life, trying to, you know, figure out who you are. And I really, really enjoyed it. And especially the last few chapters were specifically about the author about to be turning 30, which unfortunately is where I am right now too. And I just related to a lot of what she was saying, a lot of her thought processes, and these fears that she's having in her life with like relationships, friendships, all of this. Yeah, overall, I really loved it. I thought it was like incredibly relatable, incredibly important messages in certain parts of it, and just, yeah, really, really good overall. So I think it is going to be a 5-star actually. And the audiobook was great too. It was really entertaining. I think it was narrated by the author, and just, it was really, really good. So yeah, we're gonna say 5-star. And with that, we have officially finished all of the books. And this edition was so good. I'm actually like incredibly impressed with how this went this time around. Because last time I did this, actually, it was like same thing. Like I'm really came out with this with like a crazy amount of 4 and 5-star reads. This one's slightly less 5 stars, but still so good, because we have what? On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, the Mindfuck series, The Helm of Midnight, and now Everything I Know About Love. All of those were 5 stars. And then 4 stars, we have Anastasia, A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by a Thread. So quite a few, like the majority of these very, very highly rated, like either 4 or 5 stars. And yeah, like the only ones that didn't really work necessarily were Five Survive and Blood and Steel. Like I'm still kind of whatever about that one, but I feel fantastic about this. Yeah, I just feel like so good about how this turned out overall, and this was such a fun video to do. So I'm like super happy that I ended up doing like another edition of this, because I was hoping that it would turn out this good, and it really did. So really glad that I enjoyed all of these books and really had so much fun doing this. So if you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like this video, and let me know down below if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts on all of them. And hopefully I will see you in my next one. Bye.